and that you could find rent for $2,200. Rent can sometimes be about $2,500. Water is going to be the cheaper part, and electricity is going to be higher. The cost of gas here on Guam, right? $4.89 a gallon. It's crazy. With fast food, you can pay about $10 to $15 a meal. The membership is, I think, $1,200 for a year. Which price for $6.99 plus for stuff like Doritos. Lots of snacks are pretty expensive on the island. Welcome to our early morning here in Guam. We're going for a little walk and talk video. As you have guessed from the title, it is all about the cost of living in Guam. This is going to be solely based off of my experience. You know, one person, not the cost of living for a family, but per person. That way you can add it up from there. So I'm going to take the recommendation from an old video and try not to show my face too much. As some people said, I showed my face too much in the last video when I talked about things that tourists don't know about Guam. So I'm going to try to show you more of the sights here and not so much my face. So what I'm going to do is go over here and check this out real quick. Look at all the trash, terrible. So to give you guys some quick backstory, I've actually been living on Guam for 2.5 years, almost 3 years so far. So I feel like I've gained a bit of experience to be able to talk about this topic and give you guys some information. There's a lot of information that you can learn about, you know, living in Guam and the cost of living in Guam just from searching on the internet. But it's always good to hear from people on the ground in that destination where you're thinking about moving to. Wow, I didn't realize you can walk from like the Dusit Resort here over towards the Westin Subaki Tower, but I guess on a low tide like this, it's perfect for it. Now, before we get started, I just want to mention that if there is something very specific you're looking for in this video, check the chapter titles or the chapter markers, and hopefully you can navigate to the point of the video that is more useful to you if you're not looking to watch the whole thing. So with that said, let's get started on Guam's cost of living. So ultimately, the cost of living depends on who you are and what you require for your daily necessities in life, whether you're going to be coming to Guam alone, with a family, with a partner, children, and all that. Now, last time I was doing some research on living expenses in Guam, the Chamber of Commerce listed that the cost for housing or rent is about $1,500 for an unfurnished apartment, or maybe that's a rented house, right? And that you could find actually rent for $2,200 for a furnished apartment. Now that's probably a 1-bedroom apartment, maybe a studio as I'm thinking, because anything bigger than that usually is going to cost more money. But of course you can get lucky and find like a 2-bedroom for that price probably. But as you may know, or as you may not know, you know, the military is here, US military, and they do play just a little bit of influence on the cost of housing. Some of the local landlords here or foreigners, they will rent out and they will target the price at what the military allows their members to pay for housing off the base. So you will find that rent can sometimes be about $2,500 per month, and that's without utilities included. And of course, if you're looking to move here and just rent a room from somebody, you're probably going to find rent for a lot cheaper than the numbers I mentioned. But just keep in mind that a rental price that you should take note of is probably going to be somewhere from $1,500 to $2,500. So let's get into utilities here. Now, utilities depend on the person, the apartment, you know, the appliances, how old they are, how efficient they are, right? So you can expect with water and electric together, you're going to pay probably $300 and up. Sometimes $600, $700. It really depends on how much you use, but I think it's pretty common to pay about $350 for, you know, a smaller apartment or a smaller house where you're a little bit more conscious about how much energy and electricity you are using. So you can expect to find something around that ballpark. Now, of course, water is going to be the cheaper part, and electricity is going to be higher because here in Guam, it's super hot. And it's really hard to live without the air conditioner. You can do it, but I don't recommend it. So expect to pay more for your air conditioner. Now, if you're living at a house where you have your own trash can, you don't share it with an apartment complex or other neighbors, you can probably expect to pay about $30 a month to have that trash service picked up every month. That's not so bad, honestly. And then also internet, right? Depending on who you have for an internet provider, there's many companies here like GTA, IT&E, Docomo, and then there's also Starlink now. So a lot of people have Starlink. Honestly, internet is going to range based on your package that you want, but I can say $100 is pretty common, whether that is one of the local companies here or you do get Starlink. And Starlink is definitely really efficient here and effective because look, it's an island. Our skies aren't really obstructed. We usually have very clear weather. It's a very good place to have good signal, honestly. Now, if you don't know, the only problem with Starlink is that you just have to pay for that initial fee of buying the whole thing, set it up and all that. But once you have it set up, I think the cost is on the lower end, closer to $70. Hey look, somebody made a sand snowman. And honestly, when you do move here, if you are wondering, you know, which internet provider you should go with, I definitely recommend Starlink as it is the most reliable. Even when the power cuts here, like, you know, the electricity here in Guam isn't the best, so sometimes they do power cuts to save electricity. It's like load shedding, they call it. If you have Starlink and you have some sort of backup like generator that you can run the Starlink off of, it won't be too much of a problem. So I recommend Starlink over the local companies, but you can go with the local companies. They work, just sometimes you have to expect that there's outages and it happens randomly, but with Starlink it doesn't really happen, so Starlink is good. All right, let's get into some of the other expenses when it comes to the cost of living in Guam. One thing I want to mention is our cell phones. You know, you can't live without your cell phone now, right? And people don't really have landlines unless you're a business or probably, you know, very elderly, right? So here in Guam, there's a lot of phone providers. It's the same as the internet as I was just talking about. And if you come here with an unlocked phone, you can essentially find a plan for relatively cheap, cheaper than it would be if you just bought a new phone and you have a plan, right? So I think if you're coming to Guam and you're looking to use an eSIM or to have a SIM card and just top up on data when you're here, you can expect to pay a price around $65 for unlimited everything. That's calling, text, and unlimited data, even calling to the States as well. If you don't care to call to the States and you just want to have local calling here, it's actually a little bit cheaper, so you can spend about $5 less and pay about $60. Now, I'm referencing these prices from Docomo as that is who I have for the phone service for my mobile phone. You can get phone plans here if you have an unlocked phone, you have your own SIM card, or you get a new SIM card here, or eSIM, super cheap. And actually, I believe some of the other companies online that do eSIMs actually offer some really great prices if you're going to be here short term, like just for 1 month or a couple months, 3 months. So yeah, just remember when you come to Guam and you're looking to use your cell phone, it's relatively cheap. Now, it's not as cheap as, say, traveling in Southeast Asia, but it's pretty good for how expensive it is living here in Guam. So you can't complain with that $65-ish a month. All right, another expense I want to mention is gas, and that is the gas for vehicles. So if you're going to be driving on the island, as you may or may not know, transportation here on the island isn't that great when it comes to public transportation. There are some taxi services, some ride-sharing apps like Stroll, but honestly, when you're here in Guam, if you're not living down here by the hotels, it is best to just have your own car. You're gonna pay, you know, anywhere from probably $40 to $100 on gas. Unless you have this big truck, you're probably gonna pay more. That price of gas is gonna be per 2 weeks. So when it comes to the cost of gas here on Guam, right? Right now, I actually just filled up before I came down here to the beach, and it was $4.89 a gallon. It's crazy. If you have military access to the bases, you actually are gonna pay a lot less for gas and filling up your car and stuff. But that is the price, $4.89. It's pretty normal for like an island, right? Something similar like that you can find in Hawaii, as I've heard. But $4.89 here in Guam is really interesting because it actually has been $4.89 a gallon for the last I don't even know, 3 months. I don't think the gas price has changed, and I've been tracking it over time. You know, generally in the last year of living here, I haven't seen it go higher than $5 a gallon. Actually, in January and February of 2025, it did go up to $5.09 before dropping back down in that month of February. And I also haven't seen it go lower than $4.50. The gas price seems pretty stable. I mean, I guess that is a good thing, even though it is pretty high, but it's good that it's not going higher and higher right now, so we're not paying more, as it already costs a lot to live here. I don't know if you guys can tell, as I said, Monday morning, right now, it's about 10:30 in the morning. Look how calm and quiet it is. There's like nobody out here. It's like glass. Super, super nice during the week. You know, on the weekend it gets busy and stuff, or holidays, but man, you can't beat this here in Guam. This is the part that's great about living here in Guam. Even though the costs are high, life is expensive, you can offset that by de-stressing and coming to the beach and just enjoying a peaceful atmosphere. All right, well, I'm gonna continue this walk and talk outside of the beach. I'm gonna head back into this tourist area of Lower Tumon to the main road area. And I wanna talk about the cost of eating here in Guam. That is going to the restaurant and eating out. Now, groceries I wanna talk about as well, but first, let's tackle what it is like eating out in Guam. So the way I wanna break this up is that there are like 4 categories when it comes to, you know, eating outside in Guam, eating outside of your home, right? 4 categories, such as you have fast food. You know, that's like going to Burger King, McDonald's, places like that, right? Subway. The second option is you have just going to the restaurant, a normal restaurant. You know, here there's many restaurants of many different cuisines. You have the local food, Chamorro food. Of course, you have a lot of American food. You have Japanese, you have Korean, you have Vietnamese, you have Chinese, you have Filipino. You have so many options here and more. Not only are there those nice restaurants, but then you also have like really fine dining, like super, super fine dining. A lot of the fine dining you can find in the hotel, where they have buffets. They have high-end restaurants where there's dress codes. They have more restaurants that aren't in the hotel around the island, like Capital Kitchen, that's really nice. It's more expensive. So you have the option of fine dining. And then the last option is you have what's kind of like fast food, but I call it kind of like, I don't know, ready to go, grab and go, ready-made food, right? And that you can sometimes get from the grocery stores. You can get them from small convenience stores, mom and pop shops and stuff like that. They're pretty much pre-made meals meant for those who don't really have time to go to the restaurant. Maybe they don't want to stop at McDonald's every day. And so you have another option. So for me here in Guam, when it comes to actually eating out, I don't eat out all that often. Maybe 2 times a week, sometimes 3. And most of the time when I eat out, I might be just grabbing something quick on my way to work. But I generally don't go to the restaurant that much. I usually try to prepare my meals at home. It's more cost effective. And honestly, sometimes it just tastes better. It's good to cook your own food, and you can control what you're eating, and you can live more healthy. So you will find that here in Guam, when you go out to eat, you can spend lots of money, hundreds of dollars, right? Myself, I spend on average probably $100 to $150 on eating out. But one thing is, I want to just give you kind of an estimate of how much you will pay at certain food establishments, right? With fast food, you can pay about $10 to $15 a meal. It's pretty expensive if you go to McDonald's and Burger King, which you'll see when you come here. If you want quick pre-made meals, like from the mom and pop shops, gas stations, you can get like a meat and rice bowl for anywhere from $6 to like $10 usually. Sometimes it can be a little bit more depending on what you're buying, like some barbecue. But generally, I think it's about $6 to $10 for those meals. And they're sufficient enough for a small meal. Now, if you go to a restaurant, that's where prices really get crazy. You can see low prices such as $15 for an entree, all the way up to about $25, $30. And then the fine dining, of course, can be more than that. You want a real nice fancy steak, you can pay $75, $100, and so on. All right, now we're back on the main road here in Lower Tumon, headed back towards the hotels here. As you can see, there's a fast food restaurant, Burger King, some restaurants, Chili's is over here. But one thing I want to mention is generally here in Guam, one thing that's really nice is you can kind of park anywhere and not have to pay parking fees. Obviously you can't park along the main road, there's just no option for it, but you can park near the hotels. You can park like in the garages of the hotels usually, and there's no problem at all, like some places in the States where you need to pay metered parking. You can't park at, you know, establishments or businesses and hotels. So that's a really nice thing about here in Guam, is you don't need to deal with parking costs. All right, the next expense I want to mention is groceries. Now it's kind of hard to tell you about groceries without actually seeing the price of something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you guys to the grocery store and just kind of give you a glimpse at some of the prices of common household food items that you would be curious about. Now you can look that up online, but it might not be as accurate. But if I go to, you know, one of the more common food markets here or supermarkets, you'll be able to get an understanding of how much certain things cost. Honestly, I spend about $200 to $250 a month on groceries. Now that's definitely on the lower end. Some people would spend a lot more per person depending on how much you eat, what you like to eat. I do spend a lot of my money on my own groceries because I like to be in control of what I eat. I like to cook my own meals and try to eat healthy as I go to the gym and stuff. So with that said, let's get over to the grocery store and I'll show you how much things are at the grocery store. All right, here we are at the grocery store. As you can see, a big container of orange juice. Florida natural orange juice is $15.99. There's a lot of milks on the island. The one with all the protein is $8.99. Then the most popular milk we have is the California Sunshine at $6.99. There's also other stuff like almond milk, $7.75, $8.99. Pretty expensive stuff. When it comes to cereal, it can be pretty expensive at $6.99, $5.49. Even $6.79, $5.79, and that's for all the good cereal. The cheaper stuff is the stuff that is usually on sale at $4.99. Here we have New York steaks for $10.99 a pound, or lean ground beef for $5.79 a pound. For an 18-pack of eggs, it's $7.89 on sale, but usually $8.99. 12-pack is $5.79. And then even crackers, you know, sometimes they go on sale for $4.99, but they're usually much more expensive than that. If you're a snacker, you'll see that chips can be pretty costly. $6.79 is usually an average price, for $6.99 plus for stuff like Doritos, but sometimes you get them on sale. You'll see lots of snacks are pretty expensive on the island. One cost of living that I forgot to mention, as it's pretty essential today, is that when you come to Guam, you're going to want to do some sort of fitness. Maybe you want to have an active lifestyle. You know, we have the beach here. People try to be healthy. You can go out running, you can go to local parks, or there's not really parks, but place to play tennis, like there's some tennis courts behind here, or you can simply go to the gym like I do. Now here on Guam, there are a few different gyms. You have CrossFit, you have the normal type of gyms, and then you have gyms on bases and stuff like that, or you have special classes, Pilates and yoga. But honestly, the cost of going to a gym here on Guam is super expensive. For instance, Paradise Fitness is where I go. There, the membership is, I think, $1,200 for a year. So you're talking about, it's about $100 a month if you average that out per month. It's very expensive to go to the gym here in Guam. And the best thing you can do is get some good insurance and have that gym membership either subsidized through the insurance or totally paid, or even your employer, hopefully they pay for the gym membership. Otherwise, that's going to be a pretty heavy expense for you to spend an extra $100 every month. So keep that in mind. So those are the base expenses when it comes to the cost of living in Guam. Of course, there are more costs of living, such as, like, say, health insurance, right? Health insurance is really going to depend on the place you work. You might get health insurance through there, but you don't have to pay much. You might work at a place that doesn't offer health insurance, and then you have to get it on your own. And honestly, there's a lot of people living in Guam that actually just do not have health insurance because it is simply too expensive. But honestly, if you find a place that offers some sort of I don't know, partnership where they can pay a little bit and you pay a little bit, hopefully you won't have to spend more than $200 on average. But honestly, it does happen to where people pay $300, $400, $500, $600, $700 and more. Also depending on if you're single, you know, a couple, married, family. It just really depends on your situation, so it's hard to give some sort of price on that. Now, if you don't know, this part of Guam here in Lower Tumon, the tourist area, this is kind of like a shopper's paradise. There's a lot of high-end brands, as I've mentioned in other videos. So if you're going to be doing shopping in Guam, this can be a part of your cost of living that is quite high, as things do cost more money. Well, it's still only 11 o'clock in the morning, but here in Guam it's just humid all the time. So I'm actually coming inside, get some air conditioner and cool off for a bit. And as I mentioned, you know, you will find a lot of nicer restaurants here. Like we take a look here at California Pizza Kitchen. Maybe they have a menu here to look at. Oh, it's inside, so I can't really show you. Now, one other living expense that I want to mention that will completely depend on the person is just kind of like random costs, right? There are many different expenses you can pay for random things, such as, you know, getting a massage or having a haircut or some sort of service appointment, right? It's really gonna vary depending on the person. You can spend a lot of money on random things where your living expenses will be way more than actually some of your other costs that we've already talked about in this video. And so here I am back outside at the Dusitani. So as you can tell from this video, I haven't really showed my face much. Just been trying to show you guys the surroundings, give you more of the scenery with just some information on what it costs to live here in Guam. And as you can tell, it's quite expensive, but there are some offsets, you know? Like look, I'm here at the hotel. I'm not staying at the hotel, but you can just come and walk around. You can enjoy the scenery. You can sit on the lounge chairs outside, go to the cafe, the bar, restaurant inside, and just kind of hang out. And well, now it's starting to rain a little bit, so duck under this little awning here. But that's the nice thing about Guam, is there are things that offset the cost of living. And one of those things being is the taxes, right? The sales tax. There is no sales tax here, not like there is in the States. So, you know, things do tend to be a little bit more expensive here, but you're not paying tax on a lot of things, which is very, very nice. That's just one small thing that offsets the cost of living in a way. And a lot of people will say they like that about living in Guam. There is just a lot of variability, a lot of options here in Guam. Maybe you're living in Guam and you want to go on vacation, but you don't really have the time to get far away or even the money to get far away. You can just spend that here at the beach, at the hotel. You can have a little staycation. You know, that's what a lot of people do. And that's a nice option to have here in Guam. But I would say the last thing that I want to mention is that, you know, living here in Guam, it's nice because you're very close to Southeast Asia. So you can go and travel to some of the cheaper destinations that are around and make your money go a lot further than it does necessarily here in Guam. So that is one of the best things about living in Guam, just a few hours away from the Philippines, Japan, Korea, Thailand, Vietnam, stuff like that. And well, there you have it. That is just a small summary of the costs of living here in Guam, you know, based off of my experience, one person. But as you can see, you can get an idea for how much it does cost to live here. You can make it work depending on your situation. I think there is a little bit of something here for everybody. There is a way for everyone to live here and manage. But yeah, that's it. That's all I have for this video. I just wanted to cover those basic things. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments. And if you have any input on the cost of living in Guam and you want to share with other people, definitely drop it below so that way people can read about it. And yeah, if you've never been to Guam, now's your time. Get out here, visit, and you'll love it. That's it for this video, so I'll see you guys soon in the next video somewhere from Guam, or maybe somewhere else in a new country, maybe different country. We'll see.